Hello, everyone. I am Austin Montgomery, a reporter with Senior Housing News. We're going to wait just a little bit for people to get logged on, and then we will jump right in to the 5 senior living marketing myths debunked. Before we begin, I want to say thank you to our thought leadership sponsors, Conversion Logix, JD Solutions, Patriot Angels, the Survive Care Network, Marketum, and our awareness sponsor, caring.com. As always, we welcome questions from the audience at any time throughout today's presentation. Please submit your questions via Q&A function in Zoom. If you miss any of the sessions, the recordings will be posted later today and will be available for up to 30 days. And today I'm joined virtually by 3 great panelists. With me, I have Jeff Gronemeyer, who is the Vice President of New Business Development at Conversion Logix, Sophia Logix, who is the Vice President of Operations at WellQuest Living, and John Greaves, who is the owner and president of DEI Sales Management Central. Jeff, Sophia, and John, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
And John, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about Conversion Logix and what role the company plays within senior living and beyond?
Sure. Yeah, and John, you could too. You know us well enough.
Sorry about
that. Not a problem. You know, we on the easy side of that, we're a marketing company, but really more than that, we are a senior living partner that covers the entire funnel for occupancy development. That's the lead generation, the conversion, as well as working with teams to make sure that the sales folks, the CRDs in the buildings, are capable and ready to take those leads and conversions and turn them into happy residents at the buildings that we work with. So we really like to say that we are a partner to senior living. We've been doing it for 15 plus years and are really excited about all the things that our industry has in store this year and into the future.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Now let's jump right into today's session. Do you ever feel like everyone has an opinion on how you should or shouldn't be marketing your senior living community? Whether these ideas come from inside your organization or outside, not all marketing wisdom is wise. And today we will debunk 5 myths holding your team back from developing industry-leading marketing campaigns. And let's jump right in with myth number 1, and that is websites are the source for move-ins. Jeff, if websites aren't the source for move-ins, what is?
Well, websites might be the door, but there's a lot of things that really are attributed to the website that drove those leads that are different. So all of that great outreach that your teams are doing in the marketplace is driving views, and the website is creating a gathering place and a conversion. The events that you're holding are creating that momentum towards the website. And of course, obviously you have your SEO and other things that are working behind the scenes to bring people there. But this is really just the parking space, in front of the store. And there's a million different ways that people find us and think about us and come to us. So, attribution is important, but it's easy in CRMs just to say website. And that really does limit your strategic ability if that's how you're looking at things.
And now, Sophia, would you like to add anything related to events and outreach, just also tied to that whole conversation on websites?
Yeah, absolutely. We're pretty relationship based in senior living. And sometimes we forget that there's a technical aspect of it, which is, simply getting out there to the number of events and outreach that we should, especially I think in the last few years, we've kind of gotten away from being out because we couldn't be. And that has, I think, carried over in some ways to today, where, in my communities, it's been a little hard in some to get the senior advisors, the sales advisors back out into the field because, we can't, or, they're having an outbreak, or, that's kind of an excuse. And so then they're sitting back and they're waiting, right, for, I didn't get anything on the website, or I didn't get enough leads, or they're not enough good leads. And I think that excuse is I think it's slowly going away, but it's getting back in that habit of getting out there and having face-to-face relationship building, and having events where you're bringing people in, and that makes a more lasting impact because we are such a people-based, relationship-based, business. Nothing replaces that kind of outreach and face-to-face contact for sure.
And John, before we move on, would you like to add anything?
Just that there's no substitute for placing yourself at the center of a reciprocal referral network. If you approach this as a giver and as someone who's referring actively to your colleagues in your market, that's going to have an enormous impact. And it creates a search that isn't just a cold search for senior living, but a warm search for your community. And while that's not a guarantee you're going to get the move in, there's an enormous benefit to having, just really boosted your reputation within your field.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to the second myth, and that is gating pricing protects value. So Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? And if you could tell us maybe an experience that you've had at a community that added price transparency and what those results look like after they were able to make that jump.
Yeah, this myth has gotten me a lot of ducking and weaving when it gets brought up. So I started in this industry when we didn't share out the price because it was legitimate that people didn't really understand what we did or how we did it. And that price in comparison to their home being paid for was just a very difficult thing to understand. Fast forward to today, and our prospects are primarily coming in a lot of the cases to find out what a potential price is. They got a general idea of what this is going to be. It's not a surprise and the value's not there. And what's happening is other people in the industry that are not communities are sharing our prices, and they're capturing our leads. And so we're kind of hurting ourselves in some ways. And that may be a little hint to a future myth here, but there's a reason why that's a valuable piece of information, and it does such a good job for some other people. We should be sharing that. That is a very sticky point. And to your question about a story, we've worked with a number of operators where the conversation was a little hard in the beginning, but when we tested a community website where we had the price available to them, whether that was through a virtual assistant or through some other simple conversation, they saw an immediate increase, 5%, 15% more people engaging through that particular channel, that particular call to action. And the reverse was they also saw some reduction in leads coming from other sources that were going to cost them additional prices to get. So they were proving out very clearly that our customer wants to know at least an idea on our site what our prices are, and that the value of that is trust and transparency. And we're talking about that all the time. So it's really an important thing that hits a lot of different areas of what we're trying to do.
And with that transparency, do you think it also breeds engagement? It sounds like that was kind of the net outcome of it.
Absolutely. If I go someplace and transparently I'm not feeling like I'm being things are being kept from me, or that I'm having to dig harder for information, I'm naturally going to be more relaxed, more open. That relationship building for the CRD is going to become that much more easy, and it's going to become more natural. And that's what we're training for. John's companies out teaching people how to have these conversations, and we could be putting roadblocks that make that wall harder to bring down.
And John, just to get your thoughts on this, would love to hear your perspective on just how you work with different sales teams to really, like Jeff just said, kind of break down those barriers.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that sales counselor is serving as a guide to a good decision. And in order to have those conversations, they have to be trustworthy. They have to be seen as helpful and relevant to the problem at hand. If you start the relationship based on an inherent distrust, okay, I had to wait and talk to you because I couldn't solve the problem online. You're at a disadvantage right from the beginning. And it's not like we don't have examples in many other fields of the disruption that can happen when you are price opaque. I mean, look at, travel agents, look at hotels, look at cabs. All of those fields got disrupted by someone who created a more useful way to do a transaction. So if we remain intractable on that, we put ourselves at risk, and we already have evidence of that. If you simply do an incognito search of your own community and look at who sits above you in search results, oftentimes you're going to see one of those aggregators, and I will not name names, but in the search result heading is a starting at price, because they know that that's going to get an advantage on organic search. Google or whoever will see that as a more useful return. So we're handing it to people for whom they do not have our best interests at heart, and we're just giving it to them.
And Sophia, from your perspective, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, it builds trust and confidence that you know what your value is. And, to what Jeff and John spoke about, it's transparency, and it's also you control the story, that way, or else someone's gonna find out, someone's gonna list it anyway, or maybe it's they're gonna find out some other means, which may not necessarily be true. Maybe the pricing is completely off, and maybe that doesn't even give you the opportunity then to talk about your story and tell your side of the story about why the pricing is the way it is, why you do believe in that value. Some of our highest performing communities are very transparent about that right up front, even if they are at a higher price point, for example, or a different offering than their competitors, because they know what their value is. And at the end of the day, I think, for the consumer too, or the prospect, they see that. And they feel more trust and confidence if somebody's going to be upfront about that. For us, I make it a point for my teams, even on the operations, the EDs and the salespeople, to know their competitors too and share. I mean, I'm really upfront about it. I'll say, because oftentimes some of our biggest competitors are really not, because they're offering different services or their price point is very different for a reason. And unless we understand that and know that and can share that then with our prospects, our goal at the end of the day is to get them the best fit. And I'll always say, if it's not us, we're going to find you some other resource. And if we know our competitors and we understand their pricing and their product and the value that we provide versus, someone else, then we can better speak to that up front.
Thank you. And before we move away from this one, Jeff, I just had a question that just came to my mind. Do you think that this is kind of the way the industry is heading, and that more transparency is just going to become commonplace, say 2 to 3 years down the road?
I think so. It doesn't take long we're a lot like the NFL. As soon as people start to see things work, it gets copied and gets put in place. So, yeah. As always, the leading operators that are driving, all the different changes, whether it's tech adoption or whatever it may be, they're gaining value on this. If I'm going to give you any piece of advice today on this myth, when you're doing your mystery shops, look at your competitors. And, if the people that you're going head to head with for a resident in those up for grabs categories are sharing their prices, then you better start sharing it too. Because I can guarantee you that website is being seen and it's being compared, and they're going to stay where they get the information that they want. And to Sophia's point, that allows you to control the narrative. It allows your person to have the conversation. It creates what we want from what we're teaching and training and hoping for. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be very long before, pricing is going to be easy to find and not going to have to go through the kind of hoops that we do now.
Definitely. Great. And now we'll move on to our third myth. And I think this is an interesting one. Just from our perspective, at our last summit, our sales summit that we had in person at the end of November, this one came up a lot, kind of just the transition of where marketing is heading in terms of how you actually present your communities. So this one's interesting, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think it's something that a lot of us have thought for a long time. But Jeff, could you debunk that one and what operators should be doing just in the meantime, just as social media becomes more and more a part of marketing?
Yeah, this, thank you, pandemic, right? The pandemic had a lot of negatives, but it also had some positives. There's always a little silver lining in things. And one of those was that necessity to adopt video, to adopt, any way that we could connect with people and our communities without the ability to be face to face. I remember, again, when we started having, the internet become an integral part of our marketing and sales, a picture of the building was awesome. There was always photographers running around taking, beautiful stage pictures of the grounds and the rooms. And at the time that we were doing that, that was great. That was amazing because people had never seen it and they hadn't seen the insides. The next iteration was, not empty rooms anymore. And I still say that if you're going to have a picture on your website, and it's going to be a static picture, have it be a picture that's representing action, have people in it, have it showing like the pictures we take of our own homes and our own vacations. We just all came off of Christmas. Who's got a picture on their phone of just the empty room, right? You've got a picture of people standing around, eating, smiling, laughing, drinking, opening presents. Same thing for the pictures. Now, we've got the chance to do it even one better, and that's live video. That's putting snippet videos out there in replacement of those pictures and letting people really become immersed. Being able to send those videos and being able to allow people to experience and touch what's happening in our communities creates just so much more value. I don't know what the next thing is going to be. A picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth a novel. It really is. Video is a way to feel like you're there without being there. And I don't think there's any industry that could be more important in than ours. I guess the next thing will be, putting on the virtual headsets and being able to walk around and experience the community that way. So if somebody comes up with that, you owe me the idea. But yeah, I get so excited about video. We love to do it. It's still, something that's new to many operators, and it takes a little discussion to understand what that's going to be. But once we get somebody truly on board with utilizing video, you are supercharging your digital campaigns and also, your sales opportunities, because it's just what people want.
Great, thank you. And Sophia, from your perspective with WellQuest, would love to know how you've really evolved your marketing efforts in not just the last 2 years, but just in general, you think, to maybe integrate more of the video and more emphasis on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, you have those champions, I call them, at certain communities that are better at it than others. I'm often on our social media, Facebook or Instagram, and we do control a lot of that, in the background. But sometimes, we allow our teams too to be able to post, and you can tell the ones that are just really savvy at it. They're telling, I say it has to, the keyword is genuine. If you're posting a video or a picture, especially a video, and it's like really awkward and it's really robotic, or you can totally tell it's like canned, I almost feel like that could be a more harmful, and we've talked about that as a group. Like, is it better for us to do a video? Do we just do one with no words? It's just music, you're panning, and it's beautiful, and it tells a story, from a genuine standpoint, as opposed to a really uncomfortable staged one. But really nothing can replace that genuine. I've seen the videos of like an activity that's actually an event that's going on at your actual community, and people are seeing it, and you're posting that, to your different sites. Nothing can replace that true, joy and participation that you see a resident having or a team member having, at the community. So don't be staged, is what we're trying to get away from. Don't make it uncomfortable. Don't post anything that's uncomfortable, and done right, you can, use that as a step off point to having a conversation, a wow factor, with your prospect. Like, oh yeah, did you see the video of the, event that we had last week? Like, let me show you, this is actually one of our residents. Oh, and here's Sally right now, she's having lunch in the dining room, and here she is having fun at our tea that we were holding last weekend. I mean, it's much more genuine conversation. Social media is a huge part of that, but I do think we have a long way to go. I'll admit, for us, sometimes I'll have to call and be like, hey, that thing we posted, like, not great. Like, let's workshop that, and so I think there will have to be a little bit more gatekeeping before we move on to those. And by the way, those virtual reality things, the headsets and all that, that's already, that's in all the other industries already. It's happening. It's here. So the more quickly we can maybe employ it into senior living. I'd love to see that. I've seen some snippets of how it can possibly get there. We're not quite there yet, but I do think with those virtual tours are going to take another step very soon here.
And John, any guidance you really offer here, just in terms of integrating social media, or just the emphasis on kind of being open to new ideas and new ways to really integrate?
Well, I think what's interesting is that, you know, the arc of technology is moving us as close as we can to something that we can do already beautifully, and that's have a conversation with a person and tell a story face to face. Anything you can do to move your interactions toward that face-to-face, knee-to-knee conversation in which you can tell your story is going to offer you an advantage. There's no substitute for it. However, we can move toward it. The other point I wanted to make is similar to, you know, when we tour, one of the messages to our teams is never tour a building, tour your team. A tour is a series of introductions to people who are going to be serving this family. And if you're prepared to do that, you're going to be much more successful than just walking through and seeing spaces, to Jeff's point earlier. So if you're going to do video, and I completely agree, do it, but do it as a series of personal interactions where you get to see who does the work. This is, I mean, and you know, they're not all models, and that's okay. They're people. So authenticity, storytelling, and get as close as you can to a personal conversation. Those are all winning strategies.
Great. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our fourth myth, which is the first one to call wins. So you were the first to respond to a lead. You call them right away and then continue to spam them with calls and emails. Did you win there? Jeff, you want to talk about this one? Because I think this is a really interesting one as well. So would love to hear your perspective on this.
Right. Well, I wish I had been smart enough to patent the word, you know, the phrase speed to lead, kind of like 3P, right? I wouldn't, I'd be in the islands somewhere instead of on call today. I think that's the problem with it. It's not that being early and engaging is not a bad, you know, concept. You certainly don't want to wait 3 days to reach back out to somebody. That shows a lack of interest, right? But we've said speed to lead so much that I unfortunately feel like sales teams have lost what's behind that, you know, and it becomes just, did I get it fast enough? Did it come out of the on deck in my Sherpa CRM? Did it, you know, is my regional going to, you know, light me up on a Friday that I didn't respond fast enough in tracking to it? And now what's happened is they're so focused on just getting the first piece of information out that we've not put them in a good position to listen, to engage, to add value and meaning to that call. So, you know, just like John was saying before, we have to remember what we want to have happen in that call. So first is important and can be valuable, but I always say it's the first to connect. So I may be 10, 15 minutes in or late to making a call to somebody, but because I'm intentional, because I really want to do discovery, genuine empathy, and all the other good components of engaging with somebody in a first meeting that way, the first one to connect is really the one who gets all the downline benefits. So I think maybe we just need to stop pushing that phrase speed to lead so much, and really remember that there's a lot more behind that phrase that we are expecting than merely just, you know, the bad statistic of the first person who, you know, people who call within the first 20 minutes are more likely to close the deal. I'm suspect of that particular you know, data point, primarily because of where it comes from. Tends to support somebody else's agenda versus what's right for the prospect.
Thank you. John, anything you'd like to add here?
You don't want to communicate to any prospect that you're not interested. And sometimes taking a half swing is going to work against you. So if you're going to connect with that prospect, please do so, but also do so in a way that activates the prospect. In other words, gets them committed to a real conversation in a real setting that allows you to really explore what's going on with them and serve as that guide toward a good decision. that first face-to-face, I think, has a much higher correlation to success than just the first bleep on your phone. As a lot of our sales counselors can attest, after a few minutes, someone who's reached out to an aggregator and left pretty open-ended whether they're to be contacted, they've turned off their phone after 5 minutes because it's absolutely blown up. Now we've taken a prospect and turned them into a victim because they can't even use their cell phone. So it's a tricky situation. It's fraught, but the focus has to be on how can I serve your needs as a professional and expert in this arena, particularly expert in this market, because the aggregators can't really be that expert. And so just if you can get face-to-face, that's really the true measure of your success.
Great. Thank you. Sophia, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, what Jeff said is, I love what he said. It's not the first to call, it's the first to connect. And I think that is so important because, they're going to be overwhelmed, like you said, and the first connection is going to be the one that separates you from your competitors. And part of that is just that discovery, right? We talk about the discovery process all the time, and it really starts from the minute you get that connection, and hopefully on the phone you can keep them connected long enough so that you can go face to face and continue that discovery, because clearly that person's got a need and a hot button, and as the salesperson, as the person calling or connecting, it's your job to build that relationship, so that you can then kind of keep it going. It's really, you're trying to keep moving that ball down the field, and the next thing is getting them in and connecting even further. Some of the anecdotes that I hear, it's, no one's like, oh my God, they were the first one to call me and that's why I came in. Like, no one says that. It's, hey, I can't believe that, you're a salesperson. They were so empathetic. They were so kind. I was in this really stressful situation and they helped me out. Or I really connected with so-and-so at your community. It's the relationship part of it. It's more than anything, the connection. That's what helps you get to that next step. And that's really what we're looking for.
Great. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our fifth and final myth, which is lead aggregators are your friend. I think this is another good one. Jeff, what are some tips to help grow your online presence in a way that lets operators move away from aggregators? I think that's something people are really curious about.
Yeah, the first thing is to always realize when you're working with anybody is, we all have a motivation. And for an aggregator, the motivation is to sell you a prospect for, a move in, and many are doing some things that don't seem to be a potential conflict. But, I'll give you a simple example. If you're being asked to put reviews on somebody else's website, you are siphoning off the authority and value of your own digital presence. So you just have to be aware. It's perfectly fine if a family or a company wants to compete for a lead out in the digital space or in the marketplace that we work in, locally. But you certainly don't want to be exposed to a situation where you're giving away some power. And that's one of the ones we see a lot, is that review component. As we talked about earlier, the pricing piece. What we're being asked to give to a aggregator is oftentimes, if you really sit back for a couple seconds and think about it, are the things that put them in competition with us for that unseen as yet converted lead. And that's what a digital campaign is driving. So it's a reality that there is a bit of a competitive relationship there, as well as a relationship of partnership and value. So it's a very tricky thing to be in. What I tell most people who ask, and I will say, I get asked this question at least once a week: how can I reduce my dependency on an aggregator? So it's a question that does get asked. It's typically, let's power up your digital presence. Let's not give away and siphon off anything there. Let's make sure you're in control of that information and not relying on somebody else to provide it. And that's I think a very good starting point, at least right now, to reduce it. Because at the end of the day, on an average, $14,400 a year in cost to a lead aggregator for move-ins is two things. One, money that you never recoup. No matter how long they stay, that's an expense. It's been spent and it's not coming back. And then, on top of that, that's money that you can reapply if you're not expending it on an aggregator for a move-in to strengthen your own digital campaign, but to staff bonuses, to upgrades to the community. That is a legitimate amount of money that can be utilized in other parts of the operation to benefit the whole. At which point you become a better property, a better community, and more relevant and appealing to your prospects, and the whole thing just keeps building up on itself. So it's an interesting conversation. It's one with a lot of interesting emotions around it, and it's fun to talk about at the networking meetings. But I do think it's something that from a digital provider and a company that helps people gain occupancy, we can do an awful lot in partnership with an operator to help minimize that need and fear that those leads will be the difference between meeting your targets and not. And I think John will say this too, how great is a lead when, you could have it all to yourself, or you're sharing it with, all of 15 people. So, that's never something that we want.
And John, from your perspective, you want to talk a little bit about just what you see in the relationship with aggregators right now?
Yeah, I do. Without ranting, as tempting as that is, the cost of a decision to outsource your lead generation and frankly your sales to an aggregator is not a money cost. That's just part of it. It's actually a small part of it. The cost of using that aggregator to do your job is at the expense of an enormous number of sales hours. And sales hours have incredible value. If you haven't calculated the cost of a selling hour, which is frankly how many hours are available to get the job done and the revenue associated with getting it done, typically you're looking at about $5,000 to $7,500 of value associated with every sales hour in your property. And so if you have a channel that's feeding you a whole series of leads, many of whom are never going to move into your community, you have to count up the hours you spend chasing non-performing leads in any particular channel. And when you do that, the referral channels become very, very distinct. Referrals you earn versus referrals that someone else earned for you have enormous differences in their cost. The ones that you earn close at a much, much higher rate. They cost you way fewer selling hours to get done. And if you're just looking at saying, oh, this channel doesn't cost us anything, not true. It costs you an immense amount in your capacity to do your job as a sales counselor. And your sales counselors will tell you how much time they're spending chasing non-performing channels. So don't just add up the dollars, add up the hours, and the cost of that decision to send it off to someone else becomes immense. So that's the only point I'd like to make on that. And let's just set aside the fact that they're broadcasting your leads, even when people search for you specifically to all of your competitors. Let's set aside the fact that they turn cell phones into bricks. Focus on your actual assets and what it costs in your terms. And I think you'll see that there's a better decision to make.
Thank you. Sophia, is there anything you'd like to add?
I love what John said about, non-performance of leads and chasing them and those hours. I love thinking about it in that respect, because if you look at your communities that are maybe going, oh, well, they're not qualified, or they're going to take a long time, or it's going to be, they're not ready yet. You kind of got to go back to what we talked about earlier, which are the basics of, how many hours did you waste on that as opposed to doing an outreach? an event, nurturing a relationship with a referral partner that will cost less or nothing, and so when you start asking those questions, and those take a lot of time too, but like you said, John, when you add up those hours of chasing those leads, and if you had just spent that time with, real people face to face, building that relationship, your closing ratio is probably going to be better. I bet looking at that data point would be interesting.
Far
Absolutely.
better.
And I'm sure you have that data.
I mean, I can run you through the math, but I can just in a quick summary, shifting like 5 moves per community, shifting 5 moves away from an aggregator channel and into an earned referral channel. It's had an overall net savings of like 500 selling hours in the course of a year. So we're talking about a 10% shift of your move-ins. And this is just based on close rate data. That was gathered. I think it was the last time Inquired did a big, I just looked at, okay, well, how many leads does it take to get one out of this channel versus that channel? Well, how many hours does it take to follow up on each of those that don't move in? What's the difference? And it was literally 500 at selling hours, just by shifting 5 move-ins from one channel to the other.
Yeah, when you have so many limited hours in a day too, when you're having those conversations with your sales teams and they're going, oh, well, I spent X amount of time doing this or that, and it's not yielding anything. That's when you've got to really start asking the question of like, well, where am I putting my energy here?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I know we've had a few questions come in, and Jeff has been real quick on the draw to be able to respond to those personally. I think maybe asking a couple of them just out loud might be helpful for our audience. I think some of them on here just would be really insightful. One of them was, what would you suggest for communities that don't have the resources to strongly build an organic presence and on their own, and what you would really recommend there? So, Jeff, I could let you start off, and then if John and Sophia, if you guys have anything else you want to add, feel free to jump in.
There's a lot of things you can do. I think the first best thing that I give, anybody from an advice standpoint is, start with what your real goals are. We look at all these tools, we look at all these different platforms, all these different things that can ultimately be brought together to say, I want to do this. I want to create a budget, or I want to create a campaign, or I want to create a result. It all boils down to what's the occupancy number that you have to have for the period of time that we're talking about. So, what target do you need for 2023? And then forensically looking at where can we impact that the most? And the first question is always, what can we do that's going to have the most impact and isn't going to cost us either money or a lot of money? And, the Google Business Platform profile is obviously the first thing that you if you're not managing that and you're not managing it well, you're impacting a lot of other things. You're putting yourself in a position where other monies that you spent aren't going to perform as well as they could. So, what's that goal, and what do you want to see as far as the change in the impact, and then measure that. So if I'm closing, if my current move-in rate per month or my current return for an activity is X, and I start managing that Google Business Profile over the course of 3, 4, 6 months, what's the goal for improvement that I want to see and things that it impacts? I think that's where we get just a little bit lost in our success, is just not attributing the right result to the effort. It kind of goes back to that whole, it's a good campaign because it gets more people to the website. Not necessarily. Me driving 2,000 people to a website gets back into some of the earlier discussion we had, which is that's a lot of time that the people have to spend responding to somebody who may not really be valuable. But we're looking at, I need a pace, right? You hear that all the time. I'm not pacing enough. That's a little too broad and is fraught with danger. So Google Business Profile, start there. Start with what you want occupancy or what you want the metrics to truly change and improve to, and then measure that change as you take these actions and see what comes out of it, and then just keep adding. And I think you have to do it a little bit at a time too. You can't remodel the whole kitchen at once. Pick the part that's going to make the most, that's hurted you the most, fix that, and then move on until you got the whole kitchen done.
Great. John or Sophia, anything you'd like to add?
Okay, well, I may be going off point, but what it comes back to me is the aggregators don't have a presence in your market. You have power of place, and you have the power of those relationships you have with your competitors, with your referral partners, and with your neighbors. So from my perspective, if you're under-resourced on spending your way out of lead generation, then act your way out of that problem. Focus on your relationships within your market. I mean, I had a client once who they said, oh, there's this building in our market that is just unassailable. They are always going to be full. They're always going to dominate. They're always fantastic. And of course, I'm curious. I go and visit, and you'd look around and the place seemed under-resourced. It was not a shiny new penny. It was not fantastic. It was not anything to write home about, frankly, but they had a leader and a team whose charisma and powerful approach to solving problems, and their ability to connect personally, and the fact that they distributed leads, they were givers of referrals. They made darn sure that they never gave an anonymous referral, and it gave them this incredible power within their market. And it wasn't about being shiny and new and with a swimming pool. It was about simply being the place to go, because they were seen as expert. They were seen as problem solvers. They were seen as completely operating with integrity. And there's no substitute for that. And so, I mean, if you're under-resourced, just let's take a look at the power of the people that are already there. You're already paying for your people. Put them to work. I mean, let's get out there and build that net promoter score. Who would recommend you? And if not, why not?
And this other audience question gets into what you were mentioning earlier, Sophia. It was asking about just if you'd seen a difference in engagement data in terms of on the website, in terms of the use of stock images or organic photos. And that made me think of what you were mentioning just about your emphasis on being genuine and really having that genuine focus and making everything seem authentic. Just in your mind, are there some things you think work better or don't work as well that communities should be really focusing on when posting either on social media or on their website?
Yeah, I think there's a healthy mix, right? I think we could all say that as I've sat on these calls with the pictures, like I like this one, I don't like this one, or, frankly, in having the courage to say sometimes too, even a picture that's real and genuine may be, remember, sometimes when these pictures are out there, people haven't really understood or seen senior living yet. So there is such a thing as maybe they're not ready for it too. So I do think that there is an importance of having that conversation. So maybe, yes, you want to be genuine and real, but how real do you want to be? So again, I think there's a healthy mix of understanding what's I think appropriate for your audience, but absolutely, I think the response from people when there's real genuine photos, and again, so you can speak to that, when you're engaging, and hey, go ahead and look on our website, you'll see that we just posted some, pictures, or if you've seen these pictures, no, that's an actual event in our actual courtyard that we had with that band, and oh, I mean, that's such a better feel. And again, there's just a look sometimes to it that feels very real that you just can't replicate when you're doing,
Right.
A stock photo. And God forbid it's the same stock photo they've seen somewhere else, or the same people, which has happened.
Sure.
So
Sure.
you don't want to be in that boat either. So yeah, but I think again, there's a healthy mix of that, and your subject has to feel comfortable. And there are residents and staff that feel more comfortable in that situation. So again, a mix of feeling genuine but comfortable.
Great. And then another one kind of ties into just what to, in terms of technology, kind of what to do or what to use. One of them was asking, what's the best video device, smartphone or a camera for video snippets? Jeff, you would answer just directly, just saying that you can optimize all video to be posted for smartphones and be able to be compatible for smartphones, because I feel like we're seeing more and more people only use the internet on their phone rather than just on a laptop or a desktop computer. So is there anything you could suggest, either Sophia or Jeff, just related to optimizing what you're producing and being able to make things efficient, but also easily digestible and look great for a website or social media platform?
Lighting. Lighting's so important, lighting and perspective.
Yep.
Again, I'm going to sound like such an old person, but find some of those really savvy people on your team. They're often young. I've seen some stuff show up on our, whether it's our LinkedIn or our social media, and I'll call and be like, who did this? This is amazing. And it's like somebody that's like, in this generation, and they're, oh yeah, I use this, video editor, and I just put this together. I'm like, with the music, I'm like, it looks professionally done. And it took them like, 10 minutes, but they're used to using that in that world, but again, a lot of it is lighting and just that kind of smoothness. So you don't want it to look overproduced, to your point here, but I do think that those basics are important. You're not, so that you're shooting it so that it looks flattering enough while still looking real. Like, I always say, like, not the undershot. We've all gotten those selfie pictures. Come on. We know.
Sure. Yeah, we actually too at our summit we had at the end of November, we had a really intense on a few of the panels, intense conversations about just the value of video and how TikTok was becoming kind of a lead aggregator in terms of making content accessible for families and for prospects. So it's really interesting to kind of hear just how you guys are working that in and really making that be a part of your everyday. I think I'll try to broach this diplomatically. We've had some questions come in about aggregators. I think that's something that we can go back to. I think that it brought a lot of engagement. Jeff, do you want to maybe expand on your points that you were making just about aggregators, and we can really try to dissect both sides of it here with the few minutes we have left.
Yeah. I mean, I think the difficulty is, at some point, it can feel personal, and it's not. It's strictly a business case situation. And the business case is that, somebody has a revenue generating methodology, and it benefits a community to do that. But the community does have, as a business, the need to look at, how does that impact their overall operation? And in the most simplistic way, you could look at it and say, as an operator, if I own a community, I could make a decision to not hire a CRD and just let a local, referral company, be responsible for getting leads and bringing them in and utilizing their personal relationship to do that. And certainly people in the marketplace will choose who they want to work with. I have some great relationships here in Indianapolis with people who own, lead aggregation companies, and they're out working to create relationships through their own thing, and that's perfectly okay. They're in the hospital, they're calling on people side by side. I think what we're talking about is more where we're seeing some of the gray area of siphoning off, the power of like the Google business, the Google reviews, or putting reviews on the site that empowers them to come up and post above it. I've never met an organization that hasn't made the comment of, I'd love to be able to get that top spot. Well, the top spot's not affordable, for a community. So there is that competitive piece. It doesn't have to be adversarial. But I think, we have to not act out of fear, and we have to act out of the reality that there are things you can do, training your teams, what that means. We're all talking about the difficulty of staffing. To John's point, you want your team working on the leads with the most likelihood of moving through, and becoming a resident. So there are some business case issues that are there. And I think that's what we're really trying to say is, all of it's here to stay, but be as powerful as you possibly can. Don't just willingly or easily, without knowledge, give away that opportunity, because, factually, my company creates digital campaigns which have a spend, and we're trying to win that lead. We're helping that community compete against that aggregation company for that lead. We're going to give them advice on how to best compete head to head in that regard. And it doesn't mean, we expect that they're going to go away, but we do want people to be, self-aware. I think is the best way to go about it.
Sure. John, anything you'd like to add there?
Well, at the end of the day, you've got a pot of money at the beginning of the year that is available to you for generating enough leads to get you where you want to go. Let's call it full. The interesting analysis you make is, okay, yes, we have this channel. They're lead aggregators. They're not going anywhere. We're not going to chase them away. But consider what happens if we allow them to dominate our lead generation efforts. At what point do you run out of money? And this is many years ago when I did the analysis for the company I worked for at the time, we ran out of money in May if our primary channel for new move-ins was an aggregator. If they simply ran us out of the capacity to generate leads because it was coming out of the same pool. So it's not that they're a bad thing. And they can provide incremental move-ins and perhaps some that you would not have otherwise gotten. I mean, every time we're mad because one of our leads got sent over to a competitor, we'll consider on occasion, we're going to be the beneficiary of that. They searched for the competitor, but the aggregator also showed them to us. That's not a sin. That's just the business model. So on occasion, yeah, if you're getting some incremental move-ins from the aggregator, that is what it is. The challenge is when they dominate your lead generation. They run you out of resources faster than you can fill your building.
Great. Thank you. Sophia, anything you'd like to add there? I think Jeff and John hit a lot of good points there, but just wanted
They
to
did.
check in
Yeah,
with you.
absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it's just, not to forget that whether you get that lead or it goes to your competitor or not, it's what you do with it. So those relationships that you have are always going to be important, and not to rely on any one source. That's just, I think that's just the whole thing that we're talking about here at the end of the day is,
Yep.
diversify, right? And nothing replaces a genuine relationship.
Great. Thank you. I'd like again to thank our panelists for joining us today. And if anyone in the audience would like to get in contact with Conversion Logix to follow the on-screen directions to schedule an appointment for a free consult, that should be on screen now. And before we wrap up, I'd also once again like to thank Conversion Logix for making this webinar possible. And also to our other sponsors, JD Solutions, Patriot Angels, the Survive Care Network, Marketum, and our awareness sponsor, caring.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.